This
All right.
conference will now be recorded.
All right,
Well,
Derek, thank you very much for joining us for this. Oh,
no problem, Janice. I'm happy to be here. Happy that you invited me, and it's good to meet all of you. This is me, Derek Koch. I'm actually recently moved to the role of Chief Product Officer. So VP of Product is the role that I came in to the organization to do. But we've been evolving some of what we do and elevating our product focus as a product driven growth organization. So my new title, Chief Product Officer, and again, working at Pointcare. And Janice and I were talking about this a little bit in preparation for today. I love to connect with other product people, regardless of discipline. I think there's some UX folks on the call. There are some folks that are more broadly focused on product. I learn from everybody I work with, and from people that I know all the time. So if you've got things you want to talk about, I'd love to connect with you. So look me up. My name is typically my handle on most social media sites. So to get down to the meat and potatoes, what I wanted to talk about today and have a discussion about, I do have a lot of slides, so I'm going to try to go fast, but keep it meaningful. Is scaling the early stage product organization. So Pointcare is under 30 employees, under 5 million in revenue. We're at that point where we're really set to grow. We've achieved a great kind of fit with the market and the market needs. We have a great new, very new platform. We've completely re-architected it recently. And so I want to tell you a little bit about Pointcare itself, and then 5 key considerations that we've been working through when it comes to achieving scale. I'm not going to pretend that these 5 things are all the topics when it comes to scale and scaling product, but 5 things that I've been thinking about a lot that I'd kind of submit for consideration, and I think they've helped me quite a bit. And then we'll obviously have some time for questions as well. Pointcare, I thought I would define what Pointcare is for you. You can kind of tell through the name, but we help health systems better manage their self-pay population, and we do that at point of care. So what does that mean? There are about 75 million people in the U.S. I think there's been a lot of publicity about the U.S. health system via the ACA and Obamacare, and so we have a different model than a lot of countries. But about 75 million Americans are either underinsured or uninsured. So that's about 22% of our population, and that's kind of a frightening statistic in many ways. But what's even worse is that even those that do get enrolled in public coverage options, which mostly serve that population of underinsured and uninsured, typically drop about 5% or 3.8 million people every month. And this is based on data that we've collected. That is a problem for our customers, who are hospitals and community clinics and revenue cycle managers that work with those groups to collect patient revenue. But what we've also seen is a great opportunity, and we see that opportunity based on the data we've collected on uninsured patients that are screened using our tool. So one of the offerings we have screens a patient and tells you what they're eligible for and what you might want to pursue with them. So depending on the state in the United States, one of the things the ACA did was expanded out eligibility for Medicaid, which is a public coverage option in the United States. And you find that about 81% of the uninsured patients that we screen with our tool are actually qualified for Medicaid, which for many is the right option to get their care paid for. But even in states that haven't been expanded, a quarter to a half of the patients are covered. So there's an opportunity here for our customers for more covered visits, meaning when someone comes to the hospital, they're going to get treatment regardless, and the hospital is going to incur cost to serve them because they have a duty to treat the patient. But they don't necessarily have coverage insurance for that visit secured. So our solution basically solves the problem of uncovered visits by finding coverage and getting patients into it. And we've been really successful to date. We actually started as a nonprofit called the Foundation for Health Coverage Education, and out of that nonprofit around 2016, we turned into a for-profit company with a pretty significant focus on doing good for the 75 million folks in the United States who don't have health insurance or are losing it and are not covered, as well as the providers that they work with. So what this looks like, again, is over the course of our history, we've started to work with larger and larger healthcare organizations with more lives that they're working with. So, for example, Altamed in Southern California is one of our customers, and they have over 200,000 members. They're a community clinic that they work with in the LA region. So what this amounts to in other stats is about 600 facilities across the country, about 1,500 users, and that's set to grow because we're starting to move into a more direct relationship with patients in service of our customers' needs. And then finally, we're in about 38 states. We're able to work in all 50, but like most organizations, we're working to take over our space and be the brand name player. And so that's a little bit about Pointcare and where we find ourselves today. So the question we've been asking ourselves over the last couple of years is, how do we scale product? What does that look like? And what does that mean within a business that wants to scale? So I always like to begin really by defining terms. And I know for me, I hear a lot of people talk about scale, and they usually mean the output of scaling, like the revenue that we're going to achieve, the growth that we're going to see. But I really like this definition of scaling a business because I think it's a little bit more useful in the process of scaling. It's one that I'm taking from the Service Corps of Retired Executives, an organization that consults with entrepreneurs. It's a group of really experienced American business people, and I think even people around the world who work with young companies. And their definition is one, again, that I really like. And that's that scaling a business really means setting the stage to enable and support the growth in your company. And I think this is a useful definition for product, not just for the business as a whole. And one of the things I always like is having a litmus test to say, is the stage set for what we are proposing? Are we in that space already? How would we know? And one of the things that I look at in organizations is, and I'm working in a cloud-based software business, so not true of every business that depends on product to lead growth, but in software businesses, one litmus test you can use is looking at the lives of your engineers. And so this is an XKCD comic, if you're familiar. Basically, a person asking an engineer, "What are you working on?" And you could tell they're in the negative vicious cycle of fixing problems that were created when trying to move too fast and fix other problems. Oftentimes, I think this is an indication of being in a really kind of a overly sales-driven model. But to me, this is actually a really visceral example of, in product, when you scale, what problem you're trying to solve and for who. And I think it's ironic, right? Because most people think about product as, engaging customers, but the definition we've been working against in our business of scaling and what we're doing is really setting the stage to delight stakeholders by shipping value and quality regularly. And by shipping, I mean shipping software. So why stakeholders? That's a legitimate question when you look at this statement. And why not users or customers? But I have to go back to this slide. I think if your engineers feel like they're trapped in under the weight of problems, you're probably not delighting anybody else. And for that matter, you're probably not living in a sustainable organization that can take on the task of scaling. So when we think about that idea that our employees will feel the benefit of shipping, they'll feel the pride, our users and customers will feel engaged, they're our prospects' pupils will dilate when they see our product. This is a helpful way for us to think about it, and it leads us to think about 5 different levers, really, but considerations, I would say. The first is, what's the role of culture in this? And I would say that I have it number 1 because I think it's probably the most important thing. Number 2, what's the role of recruiting, finding the right people to work in an early stage organization that's trying to scale? The third piece, platform and pipeline. How does your pipeline and the way you think about it and your platform and its attributes allow you to ship value and quality regularly? And if you're not in that place, how do you get from point A to point B? Fourth, process is, we found, equally as important in some ways to platform and pipeline, because your platform might not be what you want it to be, pipeline might not be either. The way that people work together and the way they collaborate becomes really important to make any kind of progress. And then finally, I think for us, a big light bulb has been moving to the idea of milestones that have value to the business, but float a little bit free of execution, and incentives that enable that. So just quickly, when I joined the company, some of the things that we talked about were these indicators. And so I do, when I join a business, like to really look at, this is not necessarily a balanced scorecard, but a scorecard nonetheless. What does your NPS look like? Is it trending up? Is it trending down? What does churn look like? What we found at Pointcare when I joined was, NPS was not trending upward, churn was not trending in the direction we wanted. And that led me to start looking at backlog. There was a very direct connection between some of the churn we were seeing in the NPS and our backlog and how quickly we could move through that. So the indicator that kind of fell along the way with that is revenue. Obviously, when you're trying to go out and your sales team's trying to grow and there's churn that's happening, and that means that they're taking a step back for every step they take forward, that doesn't feel good to the sales team. And it actually sets up a dynamic of a little bit of impatience. So revenue, looking at where we want to go and how the way we're working kind of enables that. Competition is always important, and for us, that period of time where we felt like we were kind of not advancing as quickly as we'd like meant that competition had more time to catch up with us, and we're still in a good position there, but we have noticed that that's a factor as well. And then the final 2 pieces of the indicators that I look at is just developer sentiment and sales sentiment. So in a lot of cases, impatience with the process on the sales side and frustration with the process on the developer side point to the same problems, but they're understood differently by each group. So let's dive into these factors. First and foremost, the first point for me, the first consideration was culture. So why think about culture? I think for us, we've noticed over the last couple of years, as we've re-architected and completely rebuilt our platform and spun out some new APIs that fit into our market strategy, that a clear culture really empowers the team. And that's important during scale because you're not going to be in all places at one time. So really, basically, what does this look like? Everyone has a culture. I firmly believe that even if you don't express it, you have a culture. But what's important here, I think, is not necessarily where you are, but what you're shooting for, the highest ideals of your team. So the idea of writing down your values and giving it a try, connecting those values with your vision for the product and the market and your stakeholders, but then importantly, kind of integrating that constantly into what you do and trying to talk in terms of why you do things and how they reflects your values is really important. Fourth and fifth, we've also seen that thinking in terms of subcultures within your culture is actually really helpful. What is the culture of the engineering team? Well, we build elegant solutions. We're looking for best practices. We're trying to avoid putting our future selves in poor positions. There are subcultures that feed on the overall vision that are really important. And then the last point under culture for us has really been to encourage the ARG. So our CEO came up with this, but I really like it. The idea of ARG is creating a not just stating that you want to be somewhere in terms of culture, but giving employees the way to get there, which is to ask, receive, and give feedback. So we spend a lot of time as managers redirecting feedback from us to the person who it's intended for. And we see this as really important, again, to help us get where we need to go in terms of values. So if you're curious, Pointcare's values, a lot of them revolve around what we want to be, how we want to work together, but also what we want to be for our customers. So these values actually trickle into our customer relationships, and we share them with our customers directly when we're working with them, so they know what our values are. Number two, so culture is really important to have as a North Star. Recruiting is also obviously totally crucial, but one of the points I would make, there's a lot that's been written that's by more intelligent people than me on the subject of recruiting. But I think what I'd pull out is that I think recruiting at this stage of scale needs to be a team sport. Most companies at this stage have fledgling administrative or HR organizations, and sometimes it can be difficult to manage the administrative element of recruiting. But what's really important is that the team is involved. That's what we found, because the right people to work at your company are not 10x engineers or 10x PMs or the people who could work at some other company. They're the people who can be effective with your team within your culture. So again, culture becomes really important as a guide for recruiting. But what you want to do, or at least what we've found is successful, is engaging your whole team in the process, not necessarily an individual candidate, but the process of what you look for, how you understand whether a candidate is going to work well or not. And part of that, point two, means setting the table for your recruiting team, for your employees, to see people work in a way that's semi-realistic in the recruiting process. And so challenges, whether that's for a customer success advisor or a product manager or an engineer, challenges can be an important way to actually see how someone would work in your organization, not just hear what they want you to think about how they would work. And that leads to the third and fourth point. So third, debriefing and debating is actually really healthy and important. It reinforces your values, but it also means that whoever comes into the company, the decision is kind of owned by the team. And that's important, again, because of feedback, because if you're going to get where you need to go, you have to have commitment to work with other people. You can't have the ability to say, well, the manager hired this person and I didn't have a role in it, so it's not my problem. That, again, decision rights in hiring are very clear. It's important to know that the hiring manager still has to make the decision, but that the team plays this vital and important role, and they have decision rights related to that role, or especially around debriefing and debating. And then finally, the team sport element continues in that onboarding is really essential in recruiting. We never want to bring somebody on who's a high potential and then fail to have them be successful because we didn't onboard them well. So we have a really strong documented onboarding process, and we've gone through, about 8 different iterations of it recently, just to get the timing right. Third consideration that I wanted to share with you here is how the platform and the pipeline support Cadence. So you can go out and read about continuous delivery and integration and patterns and anti-patterns around platforms. But I think for a product person, and I come more from product management than engineering, although the engineering team reports to me as well, it's really important to think about how the platform supports where you're going, not just fulfilling the use cases today, and how it does that architecturally. And I think it's really important to let the craftsmen in your organization, meaning craftspeople, meaning the men and women who are the engineers, the architects, and even in some cases the PMs, let them pick the tools that they need to pursue your goal. What that means specifically in I think in some sales-driven organizations is that architecture sometimes is dictated based on customer requirements back to the engineering team. And again, there's impatience with getting those requirements delivered, but then on the developer side, frustration at being boxed in. So we never wanted to box in our developers. We want them, our engineers, to be engineers and solve problems and be clear on the problems. So we take a lot of time to define goals, requirements, and KPIs for the teams, but then also cultivate technical leadership and be very careful about not dictating to the engineering team, but have ideas come out of the engineering team when it comes to execution. That also means, number 3, who gets to decide, who has the decision rights in a specific situation has to be clear. And so decision rights about architecture reside in the engineering team. And that's very important. Having a clear documented process is also really important. And finally, a lot of trust is involved, I think, if you want to get your platform from a place that you don't like to a better place. And so that means embracing the learning, trusting the team, and yes, sometimes making mistakes and suffering the consequences, but having that, again, show up as learning and improvement in the platform overall. Just a note, when I talk about breaking up approaching the platform in a way that allows for speed and delivery, going back to that setting the stage, this is what we've been working on over the last few years, really just bringing our total platform into a place where it's not a monolithic architecture. It's one that's made out of services that fuel an overall platform experience, but are also separately saleable. There's a sales benefit to this and the marketing benefit, but there's also a really big engineering benefit by separating concerns in the architecture so that teams can work on a manageable set of problems and an identifiable backlog. So that's kind of an example of how we break up platform in the Pointcare environment. Consideration 4 for me is just that process is really an enabler. You can have a great pipeline and a great platform, but process is a crucial element in achieving regular, consistent delivery that makes your engineers and product people happy and excited, makes your sales team enthusiastic about going out and selling to the market, and also makes your customers enthusiastic. So what we spend a lot of time doing, because Agile is our main jam, and there's a lot that's been written on Agile and there's a lot of debate, we try to stick to constant themes and then really trust the team to be self-organizing. And so part of this has been to actually make the point with teams that Agile allows the team to self-organize in order to take on decision rights. And if the team is not able to self-organize and create confidence through the way they communicate and work, then the decision rights can't be granted. So teams want to have freedom. They want to be able to do what they know is right. And so we've, at the very basis of our Agile approach, it's really a question of communication and confidence and decision rights. You know, there's a link there. Another piece of the process that we found our engineering team was kind of isolated a few years ago, didn't really have a lot of input from customers, and was kind of, you know, back office. And so what we've really done is change that and bring customers right into the engineering process in a very controlled way, but still in a way that means that engineers and product managers and even sales and customer success are seeing and observing use of the product and hearing from customers in a non-sales space much more often. My benchmark is every 2 weeks for some kind of interaction for every person on the team. So, which isn't actually a very difficult get. So finally, you know, we focus on the basics. Product ownership, got to have one. Backlog, that's a must-have. Scrum Master must be a role in the team. And we want to see iterations with DoDs, but in terms of everything else, in terms of Agile, the team needs the bandwidth to experiment, and that enables your culture. It enables a lot of different things to happen. Why this is important to us is that part of our strategy is to focus on high impact relationships with customers and get our team, our customer success advisors, product managers, and engineers working directly with a limited set of customers to explore, experiment, and pilot new features. And it's really hard to do that without a very capable self-organizing team that's experienced with Agile and is able to work quickly. It's a non-starter if you don't have that. So we've spent a lot of time trying to build that. And that means that then we can set up our process to be product driven and design for quality and for impact. We can engineer our pipeline from idea to sale much more effectively. And what that means at the end of the day is that when sales goes out to sell something to someone else in our installed base, they've got it scripted, they're ready to go, and they know the feature is going to land. And that extends out to prospects also.
So Derek, I think
right.
you forewarned us that you had too many slides. We're coming up on the last
did.
couple of minutes, but we have, I think, also the last point here.
Yeah. Let me just say this. I'm a big believer that deadlines can be very toxic or they're very obvious. We really focus a lot on milestones that are free of execution and float a little bit freely in the course of the year, and we give the development team, ownership over taking those down. And we've been really successful at this. So what I'll do in the interest of time, this is the last slide, and it's just a summary of the 5 points we covered.
Perfect.
So
thank you.
Let me stop there and say any questions. Thanks for the prompt too, Janus. I could talk all day. I'm sorry.
No, Derek, it's all good. Was it the Casablanca quote? This could be the beginning of a wonderful relationship, but I just want to make sure we don't run out of time. Any questions, reflections, comments? Jason, can I pick on you?
Sure. No
What do you think?
questions. No questions. I think that here at HCL, within the development organization, we've hired like crazy. We are trying to take folks who are junior and put the right process and culture in place to allow them to execute. And it's something that still work in progress, but a lot of the points that were made here, I think, are very applicable.
So on culture, on onboarding, on process.
Yeah, process currently is our biggest challenge, but yes.
Jason, at some point, maybe not now, but offline, I'd love to hear more about how you approach the keyword junior. That's been, I think, in the development organizations, I've been an area where sometimes teams struggle how to bring on people who are more junior, even with some of those strong tools. So I'd love to hear, some of the practices that you all use and learn a little bit from that.
There's a cue for conversation to be continued. Jörg, Hamburg, you'll get the last word. Can we get the vote, please?
Sure. Thanks a lot for the great presentation. Very all-encompassing. What I really liked was how you highlighted the need for a good company culture and also like the constant feedback loop and validation with your customer base to make sure that you build the right product for your market. So I think that was probably the most important takeaway for me.
Perfect. Thank you. We're right on time. As promised, I'll share this recording with the slides, a blog post with some of the things I wrote down, including the ask, receive, and give feedback. That was a new 3-letter acronym to me. But let me finish by saying a big thank you, Derek.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to share some ideas here. And again, if you have things that you've worked on in your own companies that you think intersect with this, best practices, I'd love to spend a little time hearing what you're doing. Learning is key for us as we scale.
Great. Thank you, Derek. Have a good day, good evening, and we'll stay in touch.
Sounds good. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.